stuff, you've got to use some outside program like OBS or one of the streaming things. I know you like to use one of the restreaming services for
Yeah.
your lives.
All right, everybody, welcome to this month's Level Up Mastermind. We got a few people in here. Let's see here. We are recording. We've got Scott, we got Jeffrey, we've got Sean. Good to see you, Sean. Good to see you, Jeffrey. Scott, good to see everybody. And we're not going to wait for people because I don't want to punish you guys for showing up on time. All right. So, hey, this time we are going to be talking about self-care. And I got to tell you, every time that I heard about in fact, it was so at the Pacific Northwest Hypnosis Conference, we had a couple of people talking about self-care. And I can remember specifically my friend Justina, many of you probably know her. She was talking about her class. And I was like, man, that is great info for those people that need it. The reason that we're going to do self-care this month is because I found out that I actually did need it because I ended up in the emergency room. And so as many of you know, I'm co-founder of the Performing Hypnosis Summit. I'm also the co-founder of the Pacific Northwest Hypnosis Conference. And aside from those, I'm also a stage hypnotist, speaker, hypnotherapist, and of course, husband, cat dad, all that stuff. So pretty busy with stuff. In the last several months, I had gotten super busy from the Performing Hypnosis Summit before that, and then through the Pacific Northwest Hypnosis Summit. And I made it through the event. And yeah, a week later, after I'd gotten through a couple of comedy hypnosis shows, I ended up having to go to the emergency room with gastritis. And gastritis is an inflammation of the stomach. And we're not sure, could be an ulcer, but the doctor doesn't think so, thinks it was just an inflammation. Hopefully, I'm on the medication. I've got to go in for a endoscopy to find out. And throughout this whole time, I was kind of doing many of the things that I thought I needed, but I was kind of rushing through them. And we'll talk about some of those things. So that's why we're doing that. Grant actually can't be here today. He might join us later because he's on the road with a comedy hypnosis show. And so from my personal experience, I will tell you that for the last at least 3 months, I've been surviving on caffeine via coffee and diet soda. Hey, Alan and Lisa. Fast food, and I kind of let go of some of the healthy habits, or was kind of rushing through them. And that's probably why I ended up in the hospital. And so again, that's why we're tackling self-care this time. So for those of you joining us late, I just talked about my experience with just being too booked solid with stuff, just rushing from one event, one session to the next, and finally just collapsing. I was in bed for a week with gastritis. And then it took me another week to recover from being in bed for a week. So I felt like crap for 2 weeks. Has anyone else ever gone through anything similar? Yes, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I just had an occasion this last weekend. I was booked to do I'm a magician as well as a hypnotist, and I was doing a kids magic outdoor show in 90-degree heat. I no longer wear work as a white-faced clown, but I have this multicolored suit that is hot as heck and doesn't breathe. And I'm a very high energy guy. I've come back to this after I took a 40-year hiatus from doing magic for kids. And I still think I'm 25 years old, and I'm not. And I really thought I was going to have a heat stroke. I had to learn, you don't want to say no to anybody, but it's going to be 90 degrees. You don't want to show up half naked. You have to do what you have to do. And yet I was really worried. By the time I got to the end of that hour of high energy performance in 90-degree heat, I was a dead man. I thought this was my last show. I sat down and I was ready to say goodbye. Thank God it wasn't, but it was a scary.
Jeffrey, I'll tell you, there were a few times when I was thinking, man, I don't, you get that when you feel really awful and you just go, am I ever going to feel good again? Like you're afraid maybe you won't. So that's what I was going through. Anybody else? go through something like this. All right. I love what you said, Jeffrey. You don't want to tell people no. And as performers, especially, and most of us in here are performers, it's different. So a couple of things, like a hypnotherapy client, if they call you, you can probably schedule them. They don't have to see you on a certain day at a certain time, right? You've got a little more flexibility usually. Every once in a while, there are a few places that will contact me and I have a good relationship with them. And so they're going to schedule around my schedule. You know, we kind of find a mutually beneficial date. But a lot of times, as many of us know, Sean just did a show. That was a situation where the show was already set up. Hey, Sean, you want to come and do a show with me? I think that's how that was set up, right? And so it's like you either say yes or no, right? And if you say no,
and again, just to make matters worse, that was the first of 3 shows I had booked that day.
oh no,
I had this outdoor walk around from noon to 3, and then I had 2 hypno magic shows going until 10 o'clock at night. It was the longest day I'd booked for a million years. And I went to McDonald's, I sat down, I like poured iced tea on my head, and I just prayed that I would make it through the next 2 shows. So that's nothing you can't read. I said, do I go to the emergency room or do I disappoint those kids?
yes, yes. So
We often think we're superhuman.
well, and we think that we can get through it, and we kind of have to, do you want to turn away that money? Do you want to disappoint people? That kind of stuff. And so again, so as a performer, it's like, they're just going to go to the next person. And so oftentimes, I mean, you like I said, I mean, somebody like, Alan and Lisa were just on, they've been doing this for a long time. So somebody may actually, oftentimes, I'm sure they have bookings where they're like, hey, when can you do the show? Probably with a lot of us, we get that, but a lot of it is just, hey, we're looking for a magician, a mentalist, a comedy hypnotist. Are you available? No. Okay, we'll do it another time. And I've tried many times. Hey, what if we do it a different day? No, that's the day we've already got planned. So, and you never want to, I mean, pays pretty well usually, right? We don't want to lose that money. And so I think we kind of go through, and I'll tell you, Jeffrey I had a similar experience because I actually canceled my first show. I had a grad night show scheduled. It was 3 hours away. And and this is something we can kind of talk about too. Is it better to do a show? So I started off as an actor, and as an actor, the show must go on. Right? The show, and I've had people, I remember one time a woman called, we were doing a murder mystery, and she called, and she said that her mom's in the hospital. And I was like, so you'll be a little bit late. We'll see you then, right? Oh no, I can't be there. But she's in the hospital. She's not, is it life threatening? I mean, this is kind of my feeling is like, and they died. Okay. So then we'll get you to the funeral tomorrow then, right? We're okay. We can go ahead and go with the show. So I come from this attitude, this mentality. Let me backtrack. I did cancel another show because I tested positive for COVID. That was a kid's show. They made me test for it, so I had no choice. I had to. But other than that, it doesn't matter. I've never canceled a show. I've never called in sick for a show. But I felt so awful. It was just I was thinking, man, if I push myself to get, this is after being in bed for a week, and I could barely walk. And so I did cancel the show. And this is something, and I'd love you guys' feedback, because the very next night, I had a couple of local grad night parties. And if you've done grad night parties, they're pretty easy. So that's the good part. And they were close by. So it did seem like it was more doable. I could drive for
away from last weekend. Hydrate if you're going out in the heat.
Yeah.
And I read the very same thing on online. I just stumbled across this. It says milk is more hydrating than water.
Really?
Because water goes through you faster. There's something about the protein in milk. It makes the water stick with your body longer. So you're better off to have a glass of milk if you're not lactose intolerant before your show than a glass of water. Unfortunately, milk with me last week.
Right.
That is the better advice.
That's really good to know. Really good to know. So first I would love to find out, so the next thing I would love to find out, what are you guys, because here's the thing. So I go and do the show the next night because it's closer, and I don't want to disappoint people. Like Jeffrey said, you don't want to disappoint. And this is grad night, right? This is a big deal. We're trying to keep kids off the street from drinking and driving. And so I pushed myself to go to those. The first show, I was not I was not really, first of all, I couldn't remember how to set my microphone up. I couldn't even get the music. My head was so cloudy. I was like, I've got this plug and that plug, and it wasn't working. And I was like, well, I can just project. I'm an actor. Turns out it was really tough to even breathe. So I had trouble with that. The next show, which was about 2 hours later, I was able to take a nap, and somehow it actually turned out better. But I wonder, what are you guys' thoughts, on this? I mean, let's be fair. I mean, we're getting pretty good money for it. And is it fair to the audience to show up if we're not? I mean, as long as it's not communicable, of course. If you got COVID, you should stay home. But this wasn't communicable. Is it better to cancel a show? And if you can't do your best, because you're probably not going to get booked back either, because it's a lousy show, or is it better to have that mentality of the show must go on? Thoughts? Anyone?
Well, in that respect, Jim, I think we are harder on ourselves than anybody. I think we have to admit that if we just show up and stand there from the point of view of the client, thank God you didn't cancel. I've heard this, from clients too. I'll call to tell somebody, confirm that I'm coming. Oh, thank God you're coming. I had a magician cast on me last week, and I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
The sense of panic in a client's eyes when they think that you're not there at all. If you were a cardboard cutout, they'd be happier than if you were not. Let's have some talk about that.
And I will tell you, because I do produce my own shows, I produce my own murder mysteries, and I will tell you, I feel the same way about an actor. I would much rather you just show up and just stand there and do nothing than to not be there at all. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. Anybody else have opinions on that? Ideas, thoughts, theories?
Oh,
Those of you joining us late. Oh, go ahead.
hello.
Sir. Yeah.
Yeah, the show must go on. I
Show
mean,
must
I
go on.
agree with you. I'd rather show up and be dead to the world, have to drink 2 Red Bulls and a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
and try and make my way through it, come hell or high water, rather than stand them up.
Yeah, replace yourself if you can.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you have somebody nearby that can do something similar to you, and you know them, and that they'll be good enough, get them in there. If you got to be in the hospital, you got to be in the hospital. And I have the same thing when I have clients. I just booked a job, and she said, yeah, the person they booked backed out on them like a week before the wedding. And I said, I'll be there, or someone that can do what I can do will be there. Like,
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, I'm putting you in my Rolodex. That's a reference for the older people.
That's a real good point. Something I should do is if you were to ask me who else would I turn to if I had to cancel, I don't really know right now, because I haven't really networked well enough back into the community of performers locally here, but we all really should have someone.
Yeah.
that we can
Well,
turn
you can
to.
always call us, Jeffrey. We've got a big Rolodex. We did have
Yeah.
a problem where our vehicle died. It wasn't us that was ill, but our vehicle died on the way to a job.
Yeah.
And, we got to spend a lovely 3 or 4 days in Wells, Nevada.
Yeah.
Wells, Nevada. Yeah.
But again, I was able to call somebody in that city in Michigan and say, hey, fill in for me.
Yeah.
But that's the advantage of being in this business for 35 years and being someone who just collect data. I mean, I walk through conventions and grab promo and pump it into my cell phone and into my database. And I never know what I'm going to want, or, I know 5 pig racers. I know, you name it. And I know people, hot dive shows and
Russian
acts,
Pole.
acts that I've never in my life had to book, but I had it if I ever needed it. My, demolition derby producers and, all types of
And that's
animal attractions.
And that's what's good about having a community like this, where
Mhm.
you are, quote unquote friends.
Exactly.
These people are good. That they're reliable. Who you can turn to, versus there are some people that are just an island unto themselves, and that if you're in a bind, your car breaks down 1,000 miles from your show and they can't get the parts for it. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I have to ask, how many spindles is your Rolodex?
It's more like how many different databases do we have now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
know, and you
our database, FileMaker Pro, our
MailChimp,
right.
GoFunnelbox.
And you guys are also blessed because you have each other. I know you always work as a team, but you could, if one of you was not well, the other one could actually just fill in and take over.
Yeah.
Great having somebody there, right?
I'll tell you something else.
We
I'm
have
gonna-
really bad internet where we are, so
Yeah. It was one of you, Alan or Lisa said reliable. And I'll tell you what, I value reliability over almost anything. Really, if you're easy to get along with and you're reliable, I'm more likely to book you as an actor than the person who's brilliant, but I can't rely on him. You know what I mean? So here's the thing.
yeah, same thing.
One of the things that really, and Alan, you said that, and Lisa, you talk about something else, these people that are like an island unto themselves. I don't get it, because you miss out on being able to refer other people, but you also miss out on people referring to you, because there are people in my local area, I wouldn't book them if my life depended on it. I'd be like, F them, I mean, sorry, they're awful people. And I don't want to, I won't support them in any.
No, we know her too.
And
Hmm.
so so that's the other thing. So I mean, if you're just cool, you show up on time, you're somewhat agreeable, you're going to get a lot more bookings than the person who's brilliant but they're an a-hole. So
yeah, there's people that Alan has a big ego, and there are people that from back in the day, they don't like him, and I contacted one of them on Facebook because I needed somebody to fill a job, and he's like, oh well, you're with Alan, so. And I was like, oh okay, well I was trying to find somebody to fill a job and it's like in your backyard, so never mind. Like, you don't even know me and you're gonna talk crap on me. Great, thanks.
Yeah, right. So so let's talk, and you guys kind of dropped out. I was asking people if anybody else had that experience, because both myself and Jeffrey both recently had experiences where we pushed ourselves so much that we got to the point where we kind of we broke down. I was in bed for a week, had to go to the hospital. Have you guys, anybody else on the call that came in late, have that experience? Anything like that? Jeffrey actually almost had heat stroke. He had to go to the McDonald's and dump iced tea on his head. Because I know you guys are on the road a lot. I mean, this must get, I mean, it must get.
We take care of each other. There'll be days where I'm just like, I'm not getting out of bed, like until it's showtime. Don't even talk to me. And I force him to drink water and Gatorade and things like that, because he thinks he's, the Terminator and invincible. But yeah, having two people definitely helps in that respect. But I learned a long time ago to recognize my symptoms of I've done too much. And it's funny because I'm a hypnotist. So I literally have made deals with my body and said, okay, we just have to get through till Saturday. And then I promise I'll stay in bed like the whole day.
Yeah.
But we have to get through till Saturday. So it's a funny thing. And I can't tell you how many years it's been since I was sick, because I just don't have time for it. But you have to listen to your body, because if you don't, it whispers.
Yeah.
It whispers, slow down. And if you don't listen, it screams. And then if you don't listen, it hits you over the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
And you're in the hospital and you're having heat stroke. And, so yeah, you have to listen to your body. And I think that's why I'm not running into that anymore, because I used to be sick all the time, like just all the time. But now it's like, okay, I recognize that. And he'll be like, hey, are you okay? You need to stay in bed. And he knows. I'm like, no, I'm okay. Or no, yeah, don't talk to me. During the pandemic, we got stuck in Canada, and then he got out and I was stuck there so long that I missed my connection. And then I had to spend the night in the Seattle airport. And when I got home that day, I went to bed at 11 a.m. and I didn't get up till the next day. I was like, nope, don't even talk to me. Because I did not want to get sick. And knock on wood, it's working. I did catch COVID in England, but I had no symptoms.
Yeah, when
You
I
make
had,
a
I had no
good
symptoms,
point there.
I had no symptoms either. I'm sorry, what was that, Jeffrey?
Lisa made a really great point. You talk about listen to your body, but you also said you made a deal with your body. And I think as hypnotists, this is the one advantage that we have, is that we are good with altering state. That is what we do. When I felt that I was about to have heat stroke and I sat down, I used self-hypnosis to get myself through that moment so I
Yeah.
wouldn't have a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I do think you can make a deal with your body under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
There have been times when being a little older, when I'm tired and I start schlepping down the street and I feel like an altar cocker dragging myself. And I tell myself, no, you don't walk like that. And I'm going to walk like this.
Yeah.
And I turn myself into, it's almost like, also as an actor, Jim, you know that actor training is so related to self-hypnosis. That's really what we do in
Yeah.
actor training. And when there are all these stories about old performers who go on stage and suddenly look 20 years younger because they've programmed themselves to behave as they would if they were 20 years younger, to walk the walk, talk the talk, and live in that moment of their imagination. We have that ability. And if
Yeah.
we tap into it, that is a form of self-care that we can program ourselves to feel better, to make it through. And we should be aware, mindful of that.
You make such a good point there. And I've actually caught myself doing the same thing, Jeffrey. I find myself walking like an old man and going, wait, whoa, what are you doing? Now, how would I walk if I were 30, and feeling great,
Magic gift.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good point. What do you guys do and so one of the things, and I'm sure you all have something similar you say like this, or maybe say the same thing. I call stress the root of all evil, because stress is the thing that makes us eat more, drink more, smoke more, kick the dog, have a fight with our spouse. And so just being able to dissipate stress, like when I'm working with new hypnotherapists, and like, well, what do I do for this condition or that condition? I'm like, first session, help them with stress, because if all you do is help somebody with stress, you're going to solve a lot of their problems, help them solve a lot of their problems. What do you all do and when I say self-care, and I'll be honest, self-care seems a little wussish, or a little, like, oh, I need to go take a bubble bath. Like it seems a little like I'm a man. I don't need to do self-care. What are we talking about? But that's why I don't take the classes on self-care. But I do have certain things that I typically do. Do you all do things that you use for, we'll call it self-care or stress relief right now on a regular basis, or when you see the need to?
Alcohol.
Attaboy, that's the one.
Your mom.
Both good answers. And starting,
not a joke.
starting with the alcohol helps with mom. What's that? Now we lost him again.
Massage.
Massage. Yes, massage. Good.
Yeah, when we come back from the road, that's what we do.
Nice.
Your mom, followed by a nice pineapple pizza.
Well, you get the liquor, and then it's easier for your mom and the pineapple pizza. So yeah.
Yeah, I find it is easier when you liquor.
Good for you. Scott King's self-care is just inappropriate jokes.
Liquor, I don't even know her.
What else? Sean, what do you do? Do you got any self-care routines? What do you do for yourself?
Shovel snow.
Well, at least you get to do that almost year round, so it helps all the time.
Exactly. Self-care is one of those things that I'm able to retreat to my house because there's nobody else in it right now. So I have lots of time to kick back and unwind. The one thing that I do miss that I used to have that I don't have anymore is a punching bag. So
That's right. You got divorced, right?
That's why she left you.
Sorry, that's a very inappropriate joke.
I was gonna leave that one hanging, but you went for it. So
Well, that's what you do with the punching bag.
Why she left you? She's tired of being called your punching bag. Well,
No,
plus,
it
you know,
it
self-hypnosis
did work
may-
out a lot of frustrations, so.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know,
Good.
they're not too expensive. You could get one.
definitely.
Yeah, then I gotta
You got a
hang it up
wife or a
again, and
punching bag.
Yeah.
then I gotta go
Expensive?
get outside and hit it, and I'm older now, so.
They make those like dummies that are on a stand. You could just
Right.
But yeah,
Hi,
regular
guys.
exercise definitely is a good thing.
Regular
Stress
exercise.
relief.
yoga,
Absolutely. Yep.
meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
may I
don't
just
eat
say,
any yogurt.
Alexi, did you have
Yeah.
something you wanted to add?
yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry, guys, my camera isn't working.
Yeah.
My office is about 30 minutes away from my home. So when I drive, I give myself self-suggestions. So starting from Emil Covey, every day and every way, things are getting better and better.
Yeah.
So I just verbally, so when you're driving, you are in trance. It's definitely like driving trance. So everything I say to me, it just turns into my life, like project into my life. Because when you're driving, you focus to that driving, and every single thing I won't say, I feel healthy. I had eczema on my skin. Say, I just repeat to myself, my skin is clean, and it goes away, disappears. So when you're driving trance, it's really therapeutic if you give yourself self-suggestions that the way you wish to change your life.
Good.
That is the real secret, of myself, and I'm happy to share with this. Try, and really do it while driving. Say to yourself whatever you wish to project into your life.
I'm curious about, we tell our clients and our audiences that 15 minutes of hypnotic sleep is like 8 hours of regular sleep. How many of you use hypnotic sleep or deep relaxation for yourselves for recharging? And how often do you do that?
But I don't, my mind doesn't believe that 15 minutes equals 8 hours. 15 minutes for me is about, 2 hours. So yes, definitely.
I talk myself out of back pain while I'm driving.
That's true.
I do. I just simply say, okay, sit up straight, relax, and tell it to go away. And just
I
focus
find that it
on-
works well in the short term.
Yeah.
I have an audio that I listen to. I find that it works well in the short term, but it does not replace actual sleep.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that for a daily thing. I wouldn't try to just get by on, an hour and a half of hypnosis and not sleep at all. But you can hack your sleeping if you do 90-minute chunks. There's a lot of sleep hacks that can be done.
That's what Red
Yeah,
Bull's for.
I did an
Apparently.
Ubermensch cycle for about 90 days several years ago. I don't recommend it. I was highly
What is that?
productive, but it was rough. You sleep 15 minutes every 2 hours, basically.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't do
24
that.
hours a day.
I also can't really do caffeine. I have Ehlers-Danlos. So caffeine can cause muscle spasms that can actually pull my bones out of place. So I don't rely on caffeine, but Alan heavily relies on Red Bull.
I like Red Bull.
Yeah.
Red Bull's my friend.
He wants Red Bull to sponsor him. So if anybody has an in,
I remember I was doing DJing for a while and I hated it. But anyway, I remember going in and like these 20-year-old other DJs were coming in with like 2 Red Bulls. I'm like, you're 20. You have how could you need a Red Bull? It's unbelievable. Scott, were you using the coin method where you have the coins fall into a tray or something, a metal tray or something? Or how are you waking yourself up after 15 minutes?
Just an alarm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just an alarm. Yeah. Yeah. Like it's rough at first, but you get used to it. I think that it's definitely if you've got a personal assistant that's like there all the time, it'd probably be a lot easier. Because there were times when 15 minutes turned into 2 hours. Yeah. So
Jeffrey,
but for the most part, it did. I was able to be extremely productive during that time.
I have a friend that's Mormon, and I asked him how he made it through, and he says he picks up a homeless man with a pointy stick.
that's
That's another method.
Really, I usually just pick them up with a car.
A lot more comfortable for the person. Jeffrey,
I would think.
did you have you found that like 15 minutes of sleep or hypnosis feels like a lot longer time for sleep?
Well, I will say that I am better at recharging since having become a hypnotist
Mhm.
than when I was younger and more stressed in different occupations and situations.
Mhm.
I worked for a long time in the movie business doing special effects makeup and the movie business is not, it's not art, it's like being in the army and it's hard to find time. So now I can take 15 minutes, close my eyes, completely release tensions and feel much more restored after 15 minutes. I agree with Lisa, it's not going to substitute for a night's sleep. But on those nights, like I've got tomorrow, I'm doing a show in New Jersey. I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch the 6 o'clock plane to get the 9 o'clock bus from Port Authority to New Jersey so I can do my 12 o'clock show in New Jersey tomorrow. And I'm going to be tired, but the 15 minutes I get to catch on the bus or on the plane in between, I will be able to make better use of now than I would have been able to make use of 5 years ago.
I've recently
That whole string of consciousness there is exactly the thing that keeps me from becoming a stage hypnosis performer.
I don't blame you.
You
I'm
don't want to live in a van down by the river? Come on.
I got to be honest. As you know, Scott mentions that I've sort of been rethinking some of the gigs that I take. You know, if it's going to involve a lot of travel, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be worth it because I may spend the whole day traveling, and even though I'm getting a good payday, maybe it's better I just refer somebody else and stay at home and work on another project. That's just my own thinking, though. For me, Jeffrey, I think that there are times when I use hypnosis that I feel like I get a really deep rest. It's never felt like 8 hours of sleep, but it does sometimes feel like, but it's even sometimes you just take a nap and you get that same feeling where you wake up and you're just like, wow, you feel amazing. So I definitely have noticed that at times. I've recently rediscovered the Silva method, and I've been using that. I started off listening to it on YouTube, and then I can run through it myself. Has anyone used the Silva method?
I have not.
It's basically self-hypnosis, but it's a certain steps, a certain protocol. I find it, 15 minutes, really good. Yeah.
If I were to put a name on it, I think I would call it baselining.
Baseline?
That a lot of our energy goes into things that pick at our attention.
Yeah. True.
And when we use self-hypnosis to clear the field and we kind of zero out for a few minutes and rebuild from there, I find I come back from that moment with a sense of direction, focus, energy, and capacity that I may have lost to everything nickel and diming at my energy level previously. So.
I like what you said there too, that nickel and diming at your energy. I call it the death of 1,000 cuts. But I like yours better. I think the nickel and diming of the, I don't really have like a lot of huge things that happen, as far as like huge problems that come up, but it is like those little nickel and dime type things when, clients are asking you for this and, and somebody else is asking for this and somebody's asking this question and you just have all this, especially today when sometimes you think about this, like all the ways that we can be contacted, so maybe you've got a couple of Facebook messages, you've got a few text messages, you've got some emails to answer, and there's just all of this input. It does feel like it's just like these little nicks, these just little nicks that just really add up. I get that. Anybody else want to comment the kind of things that they do to de-stress, take care of themselves? Alexi talked about being in the car. I remember the first time that it occurred to me that I didn't have to be stressed in traffic. I was driving with a friend of mine, and it's bad traffic. Traffic is backed up. And she's just sitting here like this, smiling, no problem. And do you ever get like so stressed just because somebody else looks so relaxed and you can't figure out why I couldn't figure out why she wasn't more stressed, because I'm like, you should be stressed. This is traffic. And it's really backed up. And I said, why aren't you more stressed? And she said, why should I be stressed? And I was like, and that's when it clicked for me that we don't have to respond to stimuli, because not everybody does. And so I have a choice in traffic. I don't have to be stressed. I don't have to be stressed about different things. And a lot of that is self-talk, and something I just picked up, which has been working really well for me. I just did an NLP refresher. We did a week of training, and I got called up to do some work on that around traffic. And what I found was, if I put my arm back like this, and I imagine I'm in a convertible down in Malibu or somewhere on the beach somewhere near a beach, I feel great. That's right. Traffic is fine because it's just keeping me out in my convertible longer when I'm just relaxing and having a good time. So, physiology, going back to what you talked about, Jeffrey, when you walk a certain way, we move a certain way, just doing that, putting myself into a relaxed position, it's almost like you're tricking your mind into going, oh, I must be relaxed. So I think that could be helpful too.
And I tell you, when I'm on the road, I like to listen to comedy, because comedy makes me, laughter just releases tensions.
Yeah.
I'll listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me as often as possible. I love that
Nice.
show.
Nice.
Especially this
also hard
comedy, has a big political point to it.
Yeah, it's also
Alan loves podcast.
What?
Alan, what?
Alan loves podcasts when we're driving.
And Wait, Don't Tell Me is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Mm.
but then he does the politics, and he wears headphones for that because I don't know which team is which, so I don't like the sports show.
Gotcha. All right, so let's see. So one of the things to think about is, have you guys heard of passive versus active relaxation? Anybody familiar with that? So I'll give you an example. So passive relaxation, which is what a lot of us do because it's kind of the easy, it's the go-to. So passive relaxation is like watching TV. It's maybe reading a book, scrolling the internet, napping, sleeping. Whereas active relaxation is doing things like yoga, meditation. It could even include, painting or drawing if that's your thing. Now, if it's frustrating for you, it's not going to be very relaxing. But doing those things that can kind of get you in what was his name? Michele, the guy that wrote the flow state. Michele, do you guys remember that guy? Anybody know what I'm talking about? He talked about flow states. Chikalis or something, Michele Chikalis or something, like some big long name. Anyway, you can look up flow states. And what he talks about is we probably all have those activities that we've done in the past or even do today, where you kind of get in that state where time just sort of stands still, like an hour or two will go by and it just feels like, wow, I can't believe that went by. Sometimes writing is like that for me. Writing is a flow state. Sometimes it's a frustrating state, depends on what's going on. People might also feel it when they're playing a sport. Anytime you're creating, these kind of things can create a flow state. And from what I've read, it's a good idea to get kind of both in your life. There's you achieve different results going and getting a massage than you get from maybe scrolling TikTok or doing an activity that you really like. Maybe it's golfing. I just talked to Rob DeGroof recently, and it's come to find out, I don't know if you guys know Rob DeGroof, but he's always talking about golf. Apparently he only started it about 4 or 5 years ago. I thought the guy had been playing his whole life because he's so into it, but he talked about, you get out on the green. This hasn't been my experience, so I would love to be able to experience that. But he says, you get out there on the golf course, and he said the whole day just goes by and you're not thinking about clients. You're not checking your email. You're really focused on that activity. And I think, wow, that must be amazing. Must be amazing. Any other golfers in here? It's
No.
always been frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little putt occasionally.
Well, putt. Yeah. I've always found it to be a very frustrating experience, but maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. So that's
driving
something.
range is fun.
What's that?
The driving range is fun because you don't care,
Yeah.
and they
Oh,
let
yeah.
you have alcohol.
Bam, exactly. Yeah. So it's, and you can look at that yourself. You can look up that a little bit about active versus passive relaxation. So there are benefits to getting more active relaxation into our lives. It also it makes a more, oftentimes makes a more memorable experience. You know, you're not going to look back on that time, you know, 2 weeks ago that you were scrolling TikTok for 6 hours, right? Probably, and go, wow, that was a great experience. Whereas going out to the golf cart, you know, out to the golf course for 6 hours might be a pleasant experience for you, might give you deeper relaxation and being able to forget things. So just something to think about.
Yes, I would say I just recently started learning Spanish with Duolingo,
Mhm.
and I use the Duolingo on the computer, not on the phone. It's so easy, and 2 hours, 3 hours just flows.
Mm.
I wouldn't mind time. I don't know how much time gone. I just noticed 2, 3 hours gone. I
Wow.
would be able to watch telly and movie news, but learning language, it's like for me so therapeutic, so good, and such a fun. So if you
Wow.
wish, yeah, set your mind in the right way, start learning language, any language that you wish.
You know, it's another situation where I think that some people might have the opposite experience.
Probably yes, probably yes.
But you know what? It's a good point though. Finding the thing that you enjoy, and you know,
Yeah.
if you have and especially if you're one of those folks that has a gift for language and you really enjoy learning languages, of course, yeah, it would be a pleasant experience for you. Flow state. You're going to say something more, Alexi?
No, that's it. That's it. Probably for myself at the moment, the most therapeutic thing. I can spend hours. Yeah, well, enjoy walking with a dog. Take your dog for a walk.
Yeah, yeah. Another situation where like when you're walking the dog, you know, you're creating a good memory. Probably it's a really good experience. That relaxation may last a little bit longer. When you're involved in creating or learning, that's going to have some benefits too. Whereas, you know, if we just spend it maybe taking a nap or what, TikTok or something, probably not going to have the kind of lasting memories and effects. So
Just recently, Jim, just recently started doing breathing exercises, like controlled breathing from one nostril, another nostril. And it's another thing that we could use alternative for the wings. What do you call it? The wings, the drink, that energy drink.
Oh, Red Bull?
Red Bull, yeah, Red Bull, yeah. So I felt after having about 20 minutes of good breathing exercise, I felt like having a couple of those Red Bulls.
You
You
know,
know, on the subject of breathing, I would recommend, as a theater actor, voice and speech was my kind of subspecialty. And I studied with a couple of leading people in the 70s. One was named Arthur Lesack. The other was Kristen Linklater. Kristen in particular brought over a system from England that her teacher Iris Warren taught her. And so sometimes it's called the Linklater-Warren method. But she wrote a book called Freeing the Natural Voice, which I recommend everybody read, because it's a wonderful book on combining breathing, relaxation, and the impulse to speak in a way that seems very unforced and untechnical, but actually is very physiologically, technically, specifically good for you. And the exercise in the book is illustrated by it looks like a 4-year-old drew the pictures.
Oh yeah.
And it's sort of deliberate because they're meant to look non-technical. And yet if you follow the illustrations and what she tells you to do, you will be achieving appropriate physical postures and learning to release tensions and engage your breath in a positive way with the greatest natural flow and your voice at the same time. So I highly recommend Kristen's book. And people, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about what you read, called Freeing the Natural Voice by Kristen Linklater.
I'm going to write that one down.
It was I got to work with her personally as well. And it was really one of the great experiences of my life as a young performer.
You know, and you know, voice is so important to those of us that are performers. That's a great thing to.
Most people, I would say, most performers, unless you really have studied the physiology of the voice, do not pay enough attention to how your instrument works. It's a mystery to a lot of performers, I think. And understanding what it means to have a lowered larynx or a stabilized neck musculature while you're trying to produce louder sound to keep your from jamming your larynx up into your hyoid bone and creating tensions that force your vocal cords to work harder. What it means to breathe, to support your voice with breath so it produces the maximum tone with the minimum effort. These are preservative people. I mentioned I worked with two important people. One was Arthur Lesak, the other was Kristen Linklater. Arthur was brilliant in his own way in terms of the exercises he did, but if you didn't know how to do them right, you would really screw up your voice. What I loved about Kristen was she brings you to a baseline where everything that you learn to do from the first breath onward is going to create the proper physiological support for your voice so that you will phonate freely and naturally with the least amount of tension, the greatest amount of true breath support. And that's what's going to protect you as a performer. You know, if you're, I think I mentioned this in the workshop I did for you guys that what's his name out of Canada? All of a sudden, his name went out of my head.
Richard Cole.
No, Chris and Mike Mandel.
Mike Mandel. Yeah.
Mike was talking about one show he did when he was still doing stage performance, and his mic went out, and he said, "I'm afraid if I shout like this for the next hour, I won't be able to talk for a week."
Right.
Just saying something like that said to me that Mike, wonderful hypnotist that he was, didn't know how to manage his voice,
Right.
so he wouldn't blow it out.
Yeah.
And that is something that can happen to any of us at any time on stage. We can find ourselves without a microphone when we need it. That happened. My system failed on me during a show, and I thank God that I was a trained theater performer who could really project across the lawn for the next hour and still go home and be able to talk. So it's an important lesson to learn. We shouldn't take that for granted as speakers, that your voice does need exercise in the right way.
Well, I found, because, I learned all this stuff in college, but it's been, well, more than a couple of decades since then. And sometimes I get off track and I don't keep up with it. And there have been a few times, even using a microphone, I'll get done with a show and feel like I've strained my voice because I wasn't using it properly. So,
yeah.
Really good stuff. So anything else? Anyone else want to talk about things that they do for self-care? Anything that they think is important before we wrap it up?
Get plenty of rest, get a steady sleep schedule.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think sleep is probably.
You're funny.
Yeah, I know it's a difficult thing to do for performers,
When you have shows that end at 4 a.m., someone asked me if I get up at the same time every day, and I laughed at them too.
Yeah, but when you lay down, do you basically lay down for 6 to 8 hours? It ends at 4, so you don't get to bed until 6. Do you sleep till noon, or are you up at 9 a.m.?
No, because the hotel kicks you out.
No, I wake up.
Yeah.
I pretty much wake up at the same time every day, regardless of what time I go to sleep. I'll wake up no later than 9. Rarely, very rarely, do I sleep till 11. And usually it's because I got up at 9, and then went back to bed at 10 and woke up at 11. But yeah, no, my body clock wants to wake me up in the morning.
One of the problems of late night shows and short turnarounds, because you have to get up in the morning, is you don't get to sleep to the level of depth you need to be restorative.
Yeah.
You get to REM sleep, but you have to go past that to get to where your body actually restores itself. I like melatonin because melatonin is one of the few things that I've found that will take the edge off, calm my mind, and get me down there fast enough that I can rebound if I have a short turnaround.
I like Red Bull.
That's for breakfast.
No, coffee's for breakfast, Red Bull's for lunch.
So yeah, a couple of things that I think that sleep more. It's funny because there's so many of these entrepreneur types out there that are they're talking about getting up you have to get up at 4:30 a.m. to be successful, or you got to you got to do all this stuff. But, really, I think we are finding more and more that sleep is one of those things that is just critical for our long-term and short-term health. And it's something that in the past has been one of those things that even if you weren't a drinker or smoker or something like that, or did, eat fast food, you still might cut your sleep and not really think about the impact. But, when we're not sleeping enough, that's another area where it causes that stress that can cause us to, eat more, drink more, do all those things, drink Red Bull, all that stuff. So really good point about that. A couple of things that Jeffrey mentioned too, there's some apps out there, some great apps on learning breathing exercises. And there's some videos, and I don't know if any of these are based on or related to the work that you've talked about, Jeffrey, but there's things like dragon's breath, from coming from pranayama, alternate nostril breathing. Pranayama is yogic breathing. And those can be you can use those techniques for different things. Dragon's breath will get you kind of energized. Alternate nostril can kind of relax you. Those are things you can look up on YouTube.
I will say something that most people need to learn about. We carry a lot of tensions in our face, in our neck, in our upper body. These inhibit vocal production. Learning deep breathing and what it means to support with deep breath allows you to release these tensions. There are stretches you can learn to do. They look ridiculous. They sound ridiculous when you're doing them, as any actor knows who's ever done them. But you have to loosen up this musculature and release the clamping and the tensing if you want to protect your voice so it can vibrate freely and work freely. So it's good to develop an awareness. Many people do not pay attention to where's my hyoid bone, where's my larynx, what does that feel like, what's a lower larynx feel like, a higher larynx. Most people have zero idea, but it's a good thing to develop an awareness of.
Excellent. Yeah. And of course, we all have one of the best tools ever, self-hypnosis and, listening to recordings and things like that. So highly encourage us all to explore those, create our own if we need to, even if it was on self-care, personal self-care. Maybe cutting back to one Red Bull. Maybe you can include that in your hypnosis, Alan.
Or intravenous Red Bull, whichever works better.
Yes, right. All right, everybody. If there's nothing else, we're going to end the mastermind for this month. See you all next month.
Oh, no, we try not to do it. Yeah.
Try not to do it.
What weren't you doing?
All righty.
All right. See you guys.
Well, we try not to do it when it's not a performance day.
Gotcha. Right.
Okay, dokie.
Red Bull or something else. I don't know. Whatever. That's you guys. You guys are a team. You do what you do.
Guys.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.